the kind of core issue for modern Judaism is the rejection of Christ as the Messiah.
Mm-hmm.
Even like to the extent where, so in Israel, Israel has what's called the law of return, which is their law concerning who is allowed to become a citizen of Israel based on their Jewishness.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have one, so it's largely an ethnic thing, right? So if you have one Jewish grandparent, you can immigrate to Israel. But there are also laws concerning converts, right? And so if you're if you convert to Orthodox Judaism, you can move to Israel. If you convert to conservative Judaism, you can move to Israel. If you convert to Reform Judaism, you can move to Israel. But you can't qualify if you convert to Messianic Judaism.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as a sidebar, I think Messianic Judaism is silly. That like if you believe Jesus is the Messiah, you're a Christian, and you should just call yourself a Christian because that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But from the perspective of Israel, it seems to be that the position of the Israeli government is if you're a Reformed Jew, you can literally believe nothing.
Mm-hmm.
You can be an atheist communist and be a Reformed Jew. But you can't, so that's fine. So you can qualify as a real Jew if you don't believe in God.
Mm-hmm.
But if you believe that Jesus is the Son of God, you're out.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't count.
Mm-hmm.
So you can look at that and you can go, well, all right, it kind of seems like the core central issue that unites all Jews, right? That they have a lot of disagreements. And if I grew up with my best friends growing up were Jewish. They're a cantankerous bunch of folks, which is a thing that I very much love about them, right?
Yeah.
Which is why I think a lot of these conspiracy theories are silly, is like the idea of a bunch of Jews sitting in a room agreeing on stuff is the dumbest dumbest thing. It's almost as dumb as Lutherans sitting around agreeing on stuff.
Yeah.
If someone came to you and said, there's a conspiracy in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod where a bunch of Lutheran pastors had a convention and they all agreed on something, you're like, that's all right. I know immediately that didn't happen.
Yeah.
because it's never happened. But there's all right. So aside from all of that, right, you can look at we can walk and chew gum at the same time in the sense that we can recognize modern Judaism as it comes out of the Pharisaical tradition, which was rooted in a rejection of Christ. And the same people who were conspiring to put Christ to death, that's the theological tradition that modern Judaism is founded from. So we can recognize the core doctrine of the modern Jewish faith. The one thing that will really make you not a Jew is if you believe in Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, we can say Judaism is kind of the most anti-Christian religion on earth.
Mm-hmm.
Not in a sense of like, I would, any sane person would rather live as a Christian in Israel than as a Christian in Pakistan or in Egypt or, like any Muslim majority country, obviously, if you're being honest with yourself. But just in terms of like the core principle of the religion, Judaism's even probably more anti-Christian than Islam is.
Mm-hmm. So you can be heretical in saying there isn't a God.
Right.
It should be heretical.
Right. But you're still kind of in the club.
Yeah. But if you say you're heretical in saying, yes, I do believe there's a God and I believe Jesus is the Christ.
Right. Then you're out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we can look at that and go, well, yeah, you won't find a religion that's probably more centered in a rejection of Christ than Judaism.
What do you think about the phrase Judeo-Christian?
No, I think that's a silly phrase.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people use it because it's sort of this like it's embracing a false notion of what the Christian faith is, as though this idea of like, well, there was Judaism and then Christianity came out of Judaism.
Mm-hmm.
And so we sort of took our own kind of spin on things, like Aretha Franklin doing her own rendition of Otis Redding's Respect.
Mm-hmm.
Her version just got way more popular,
right?
I just made up that analogy off the top of my head.
That was good, yeah.
Really, really proud of that one.
Pennant loves that.
Right. I do, by the way, love that Aretha Franklin's Respect is considered this great like feminist anthem, and if you look at the lyrics, it's very much the opposite of that.
Is it really?
It's about a guy coming home and expecting respect. Respect from his woman. So I get a kick out of that. But that's obviously an entirely false view of what the actual divide is, which Jesus shows us very clearly in the scriptures. Is when he's saying like, look, all of the scriptures testify concerning me.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't, as he says in the Gospel of John, like, look, if you don't believe in me, your father's not Abraham. Your father's the devil.
Mm-hmm.
So Abraham saw my day and believed in it. Abraham believed in the promise of the Messiah, believed that his son would be the very Son of God.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, we say, no. Like, Christianity is not an offshoot of Judaism.
Jacob Benson phrased it in a good way when we had him on, and he basically said that, like, what do you refer to Abraham as?
Mm-hmm.
And you refer to him as a Christian.
Right.
And the reason is because what defined the Old Testament people, and it was that they were messianic. They were
Right.
waiting for the Christ.
Right.
So Abraham was right in that he was anticipating the Christ correctly. Mm-hmm. And then Christians just carry that on where they said, okay,
Right.
but now we know who the Christ is.
Right.
So he would say, we don't, it's not like there was a Jewish religion and then Christianity. There was always Christianity, which was being aligned to the Messiah.
Yeah. So, I mean, when people talk about, like, the idea of Judeo-Christian values, right,
Mm-hmm.
and the Ten Commandments, well, the reason the reason that entire world cultures have been formed by a certain religious view is not because of post Second Temple Judaism.
Mm-hmm.
It's because of the Christian faith, which was the fulfillment of these promises given to Abraham.
Mm-hmm.
So again, this is a good example of when I say, like, there are certain things that you're supposedly not allowed to say, which are entirely true.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So again, like, I think it's a pretty inarguable statement that just from a historical standpoint, the values that we talk about as Judeo-Christian values are because of Christians.
Mm-hmm.
It's not because of the Judeo part of that in a historical sense. Like, what's been the most, it would be like if someone told you the most influential Beatle was Pete Best,
Mm-hmm.
The drummer that they kicked out before they had Ringo and had their recording contract.
Mm-hmm.
Is you'd go, well, he's sort of like he's a part of the story.
Mm-hmm.
But no, that's not why you know the song catalog of the Beatles.
Mm-hmm.
So it's another good example of a way in which you're somehow a Jew hater if you won't give 13th century rabbis the same amount of credit as Constantine,
Mm-hmm.
Or St. Paul, for that matter, in the development of Western morality. But it doesn't follow from that again, that, like, Jews are having secret meetings for how they can undermine Western civilization.